This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I'm the host on this podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspectives, Spiritual Truths. Tonight, we're going to continue our journey as we the people. We've been focused on a specific path related to gaining a clear understanding of how our nation is structured, how it's supposed to work. This flag behind me is a great symbol connected to our amazing nation. The seal here is to remind us of the importance of praying for the president of this nation. I am going to continue to pray for the 265,900,000 Americans who were identified as living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet in 2024. Do you think that those people have come out of the fire? I think they're still working their way out. Some have 2 and 3 jobs. They're still trying to get their footing. 79%, let's round it off, 80% of Americans felt that the country was going in the wrong direction. Citizens spoke loud and clear regarding their position of what was important to them and this nation, and in terms of leadership, and issued a mandate loud and clear of what was really important in light of all the dynamics presented to us as citizens, we the people. I've repeatedly asked on this venue, on this podcast, who needs to be the leader of America? Right here, I continually ask that every week on From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspectives, Spiritual Truths. What is at stake? Does it matter who's in the White House? Well, that determination has been made, and tonight we're going to examine something that has generated a lot of discussion in our nation, DEI, and freedom from it driving the fabric of our nation. The first week that President Trump was inaugurated, he made some bold and decisive moves that have a lot of implications through executive orders. Newly inaugurated President Trump issued an executive order against DEI practices in government. The FCC chairman, connected with that, issued a statement announcing the end of DEI at the FCC. Now, the chairman of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, announced the end of all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at the FCC. That's what DEI stands for. Diversity, equity, inclusion. What does that mean? DEI encompasses people of different ages, races, ethnicities, abilities, disabilities, genders, which I found out last count, there's 72 genders. That's what we're being told. That's what the flow that the nation was going in. DEI wanted to base hiring practices on ethnicities, disabilities, ages, races, genders, 72 of them. Last count I had, religions, cultures, and sexual orientations. It also covers people with diverse backgrounds, experiences, skills, and expertise. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are 3 different but interconnected concepts. So if we're using that to hire people, I'm thinking, okay, so do you come to a job interview and you are supposed to make it be known that you are one of those 72 genders? Are you to make it known in the interview that you are of a particular sexual orientation? If that's going to be used to determine who's going to be hired for a particular position? Contrary to the Communications Act, it deprives Americans DEI did, of their rights to fair and equal treatment under the law. It also represents a wasteful expenditure of taxpayer resources. Nonetheless, the FCC joined other private and public sector institutions in promoting discriminatory DEI policies during the Biden administration. If those are the criteria, all those things I went through, that we're going to determine whether or not someone's hired, sexual orientation, one of those 72 genders, race, all of those factors, that's how we determine who's going to get a job. What are we asking people? I have gone through the interview process to hire people. I wasn't interested in their sexual orientation. I was interested in if they could do the job. Listen, our taxpayer dollars was spending $68 million a year at the Department of Health and Human Services all around DEI. Our taxpayer dollars came out of our checks, went towards that. The U.S. Department of Education spent at least $1 billion on grants advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in what? Hiring, programming, and mental health training in America's schools since 2021. In other words, the Biden-Harris regime cabal. Specifically, the FCC chair, the head of the FCC, said he was erasing DEI as a priority in the commission's strategic plan after the Biden administration had placed the policies as, listen to this, the second highest priority in the plan. And that's what Kamala Harris was running on. That gender-driven, that sexual orientation-driven criteria, they saw it as the second highest priority as it relates to hiring Americans. Whereas the majority of Americans will focus on the economy and illegal immigration. True story. He said he was going to end the DEI advisory group at the FCC and end any mention of DEI in the commission's budget. DEI will also be excised from performance reports at the FCC as well as from economic plans. The head of the FCC said President Trump's leadership on this will deliver great results for the American people as agencies act pursuant to his executive order. DEI policies and advocates got a boost from businesses and corporations after the Black Lives Matter rioting over the death of George Floyd in 2020. That's when it really came out. And so they were burning businesses to the ground and demanding that all of those aforementioned categories, that's what was driving the nation. So Trump has made rooting out DEI policies from American society a central focus of his administration. And I'm going to go ahead and put this out here that the group that was at the bottom of the list that benefited from DEI were Black Americans. The group that was at the top were women. At the bottom, it was Black Americans. It just was. And I see Black people are just totally offended that they're going to take away our rights and they don't care about Black people. Sweetheart, if we are not qualified, trained, in training, listen, skilled and favored by God, we're in trouble. We need to be qualified. This is something that President Trump said. I will end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. And that is what drove the Harris-Biden cabal regime. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. Now listen, I'd be foolish if I said that there are not prejudices and racism going on. But I'm telling you what, if I show up at the table, and here's the bottom line, if I show up, if someone thinks DEI is what they need, if I show up, you show up, and we think that DEI is what we need for God to bless our lives and open doors for us, prayers are direly needed. Listen, we are skilled, qualified, experienced, in training, and we have the favor of God. Need I say more? Being a Blue Star mother really got my attention regarding President Trump signing an executive order ending diversity programs in the nation's military. Listen, bottom line, those in military are there for number one reason, under the leadership of our commander-in-chief. That is to protect us from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, being war ready at all times. It's for protection. The directive was among a series of executive orders the White House released that sought to reshape the country's armed services. The armed services was specifically targeted with this DEI. President Trump signed executive orders tasking the Pentagon officials with reviewing its policy on transgender troops and reinstating many service members who were dismissed. Why? For refusing the coronavirus vaccine. Listen, under the Biden administration, listen to this. 8,000 military personnel were fired, and when they repealed it, 43 returned. Now, let me say this. Hold up. Listen, let's stop right here. About the transgender, they're my fellow Americans. I respect them and I love them. But I know those who've had that surgery. And if they're supposed to be in a position to protect us from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, war ready, there were people that were taken up to 18 months for the full timeline of what was needed for everything, every detail that was involved in that surgery and the whole process of therapies, the hormone, all of it. And once they've had certain surgeries and interventions on their bodies, things being cut off and so forth and so on, y'all seen the pictures. Are they going to be war ready? There were people going in the military specifically for one reason, to get the surgery. And then Kamala Harris was bragging about how illegal immigrants in prison were getting the surgery. And she was all for it. That's why she lost. In his order directing the Pentagon to end diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, President Trump said the programs discourage merit and leadership and discriminate on the basis of race and sex. The order also applies to the Coast Guard, which is governed by the Department of Homeland Security. Gosh, guys, when we see all these dynamics in the direction that we were going, and we got to look at 72 genders, and we've got to look at your sexual orientation. I'm not asking that when I do interviews. I interview people and offer jobs. I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to know if you had the skills, the training, and the ability and the willingness to learn to do the job. President Trump said he's committed to meritocracy, in other words, merit, and to the elimination of race-based and sex-based discrimination within the armed forces of the United States. No individual or group within our armed forces should be preferred or disadvantaged on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, color, or creed. Glory to God. Pete Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense, guess what Trump has given him the assignment to do? You ready? He has 90 days to submit a report to the Trump administration detailing all the department's current DEI programs and offices. You, as a leader, you have to locate where you are. People were getting tripped out about Trump. He's cut this. He cut my food stamps. He cut Medicare and Medicaid. He cut this. You have, as a leader, ask me how I know. You have to know your expenditures. So you got to pull back, particularly if whoever was in there before you had made a debacle and a mess out of everything. You don't even know what you're walking into. So you have to get an assessment. So that's what Trump did. That's wisdom. That's business. That's leadership. So Trump said, okay, Pete Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense, congratulations, sir, on your new assignment. He said, you have 90 days to submit a report to me detailing all the department's DEI programs and offices. According to President Trump's executive order, both the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security have 30 days to submit a plan to meet the guidelines and laid out that have been laid out in the new order, and 180 days to present a progress report. I love it. I do these kinds of reports all the time. You have to have a framework, a jurisdiction through which you work. You have to have order. You have to have systematic practices, policies, and procedures, or you're going to have a mess. So it looks like the previous administration, they were just willy-nilly doing anything. That's why we had so much chaos. Wow. President Trump's order additionally prohibits the military from telling its members that, and this is what they had built in, that America's founding documents are racist or sexist, or from teaching them about gender ideology. They are there to be strong soldiers, to be ready to fight all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That's why they're in the military. Defined by the administration as an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity. Get that out of there. That's not the focus of the military. It was so distracting. Women were terrified when they were informed in training that men could be in your bathrooms and showers. In addition, these institutions shall be required to teach that America and its founding documents remain the most powerful force for good in human history. Oh, yeah. Listen, either you like America or you don't. If you don't like it, you're welcome to leave. There are planes that fly out every day. I love the place, as imperfect as it is. All of this leads us into our clinical perspective tonight, my brothers and sisters, and my fellow Americans that I love. Our clinical perspective, we're going to look at provoking a lot of thought. It brings us awareness, and hopefully it prompts us toward the intervention of truly examining what is going on in the inner recesses of our hearts. All of these dynamics are making people say some very hateful things. They hate Trump. They hate conservatives. They hate Christians. We've seen it on social media. We've experienced it from families and colleagues and friends. Oh, yes. Abuses, attacks physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, from pulpits. Oh, it's horrendous what people are being subjected to because this is not the agenda that's going to drive the country anymore. About our focus being on 72 genders and sexual orientation, and that being used to determine if who and race, and if you black or if you white or if you Hispanic or you Native American or you Asian or whatever, to determine if you'll get the jobs, or you're Christian or you're Buddhist or you're Muslim. No, it's all you qualified. And so because people are so enthralled and so enmeshed in these agendas and these mindsets, a lot of times they become vulnerable for things to be driven by hatred. Listen, the heart of man is desperately wicked. Just desperately wicked. That's a quote from the Bible from Jeremiah 17:9. The verse reads this. It says, the heart is deceitful. You know what's in my heart. You know what's in your heart. It says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? That verse suggests that the human heart is complex, not easily understood. It can even be mysterious, and that only God can fully understand it. The verse also suggests that the human heart can even be diseased with sin and deceitful, and that the root of sin is a failure to trust in God. There are answers to freedom from hatred. I want to ask you, I believe it is, what would happen if we begin to embrace the concept that we can be free from hatred? 1 Samuel 16:7 says, God searches and knows the heart. Jeremiah 23:14 says, God's people can be wolves in sheep's clothing, right behind a pulpit. Titus chapter 1 verse 10 says, God's people can be wolves in sheep clothing. Revelations chapter 2 verse 2 says, God's people can be wolves in sheep's clothing. So, here's my question. Is there a cure for a hateful heart? Can a hateful heart be purified? What would happen if we live with integrity? Resist the urge to want to play fire with fire or to pay back others for the things they've done to us. What would happen? We're talking about dealing with a deceitful, hate-filled heart. It's far too rampant in our nation. What would happen if we stopped comparing? What would happen if we practice compassion often? What would happen if we laugh out loud? What would happen if we talk things out? What would happen? My motto on social media is what would happen if we talk to and with each other versus at each other. The good news is that there are ways to let go of hate. Yes, it is. Now, as we wrap this up and put a little bow on it, we're going to look at some practical tips for healthily overcoming hatred and resentment. Oh, yeah, it can be overcome. I was taught how to hate white people. And in my little heart of hearts, I didn't think it was right. But it was rampant around me because I was surrounded by the KKK and Jim Crow. And I was taught you can't trust them white people. They'll smile in your face and stab you in the back. And it made me ever more curious of them. I wanted to get to know them for myself. And it has been a wonderful experience with their imperfect selves, just like any other human being. And they happen to be some of my best friends. So I had to learn to get set free from a certain mindset. So we have been taught to hate. You're not born hating people. You have experiences that set us up for hatred. So do we possibly get in a position where we may need to consider forgiveness? Oh boy, the F word, the forgiveness. Oh Lord, help us all. What would happen if we learn how to practice forgiveness? Now that may seem like an impossible task. I know it was for me when I was worn out and was targeted with institutionalized racism. They literally tried to destroy me. 4 white ladies tried to destroy me. And they told me they were going to do it. Oh, thanks for letting me know. And I found out later from another white professional who knew what was going on with me. He met with me. He's gone on now, Dr. Ed Matthews in Columbus Public Schools. When I was being trained to be a school psychologist, I was to my DEI. I was qualified. Oh, yeah, I had the skills. But he said, but you know why they're doing this, right? I said, no, I don't know. I don't get it. He said, because you're too young and you're black. Huh? Well, you know, it eased my troubled mind. At least I had a reason, because I did not get it. Baby, Janice Pons, at that time, I was Janice Gilmore, I had to make some strong decisions. Because that hatred that was welling up in me, it was trying to get a grip on me. And I had to learn to practice the forgiveness. Now, this may seem like an impossible task, and it did to me. I'm talking about what I've lived. But forgiveness is a crucial part of letting go of anger. I had to learn to let anger be my ally and to use it effectively, to get skilled. It's like, oh, I'm going to compete and I'll be the best. And God will help me. Forgiveness is a crucial part of letting go of anger. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget what happened or condone the person's actions. I didn't condone what they did to me, those 4 white ladies. It simply meant that I was willing to let go of the anger and resentment that I felt, but it had a grip on me. But how do you forgive someone who's hurt you? Start by asking yourself why you're holding on to the anger. What would happen if we asked ourselves that question? Because you want revenge and I want revenge, or was it because I was afraid to let go? I once identified the reason. Once I identified the reason, I could start to work on forgiving them. And through the therapeutic process, I had to name all 4 of them. I had to go there. Boy, did the Holy Spirit meet me front and center. It was powerful. This is why I talk about the therapeutic process. And if you decide that you've been gripped by hatred, you might want to engage in the therapeutic process. You can go to JanicePons.com, go to the resource page, and I've already mapped it out how you can get a therapist. Powerful, life-changing, the therapeutic process. Try to see things from a different perspective. What would happen if we do that? Now, this was a challenge for me to try to see things from their perspective. Why might they be acting that way? Now, they had agendas, but anyway, it was driven by a lot of things. But the bottom line, I had to decide what was I going to do with it. It's going to boil down to what you going to do with that. Yeah. Was it because they were in a bad place themselves, or was it because they didn't know any better? Had they been taught wrong? Had they been mistreated? Were they projecting something that a black person had done to them on me? I don't know. But they told me they were going to blackball me, and they did. But God had the final say. It's important to remember that you can forgive yourself. That's a big, tall order to fill. If you're struggling to let go of self-hatred, what would happen if you try practicing self-compassion? This means being kind and understanding towards yourself, even when you make mistakes, especially when you make mistakes. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. People say, oh, just forgive and forget. Baby, I'll never forget it. Don't want to forget it. Because it helps me to maintain a perspective. It helps me to be sensitive. It's helped me to mature. Yes, it did. It might take time to let go of the anger and resentment, but it's important to keep working on it. What would happen if we focus on the present moment? When you're struggling to let go of hate, it's easy to get caught up in the past. You might find yourself dwelling on what happened and replaying the events repeatedly in your mind. I replayed it for years. Yes, I did. It wasn't easy, but I did it. This can be harmful to your mental and emotional well-being. It's important to focus on the present moment and live in the here and now. One way to do that is to practice mindfulness. That's staying in the moment. This involves paying attention to your thoughts and your feelings in the present moment. It can help you become more aware of your thoughts. I had to become aware of my thoughts and my emotions. I had to go there. I had to wrap my mind around. I had to give it a language, name and explain, process and metabolize where I was, my emotions, why, what had happened. And I had to gain strategies, skills, and tools for wellness and recovery. Oh, yes, I did. That's the therapeutic process. And I had to learn how to let go of the negative ones. I had to learn to use misbelief therapy, where I identified the lies and learned how to systematically replace it with the truth. And a lot of people will die believing lies. What would happen if we challenge our negative thoughts? If you're struggling to let go of hate, you likely have some negative thoughts about the person who hurt you. These thoughts might be that the person's evil or that they deserve to be punished. It's essential to challenge these negative thoughts. Otherwise, they're going to continue to fuel your anger and your resentment, and you can die a hate-filled person. What would happen if we ask ourselves whether the thoughts are really true? For example, is the person really evil, or are they just human and fallible like everyone else? It might be helpful to consider the person's good qualities. This can help balance the negative thoughts and make them seem less, maybe, one-dimensional. What would happen if the negative thoughts are about you? It's also important to challenge those negative thoughts about that I was even having of myself. I didn't do that. I had to challenge them. Am I really a bad person because I made a mistake? Or was it that I was just human? Did I make a mistake? Could I have done something different? Asking these questions can help to reduce the power that negative thoughts can have over you. What would happen if you let go of the need to revenge? But in reality, revenge rarely brings satisfaction. In fact, it often makes the situation worse and causes more pain. Getting revenge might feel satisfying at the moment, but it's not going to help you let go of hate. In fact, you're likely to have the situation become worse. It's essential to let go of the need for bona fide revenge and focus on forgiving the person who hurt you. I'm telling you, sometimes you need the therapeutic process to go through this, walk through this. What would happen if we do something nice for the person who hurt us? This might be it sounds strange. What do you mean? Well, in doing something nice for them, that person that hurt us, it might break down a wall of anger and resentment. It could be sending them a card or giving them a gift, or it could be more significant if forgiving them is for what they did. It's freeing us as individuals. Doing something nice for the person who hurt us is a powerful way. It's just a powerful way to free you. It helps you to see them in a different light and start to forgive them. What would happen if you wrote a letter to them? Listen, you might not send the letter to them. You might just get it out and you might burn it. You might put it in the trash can, but you got it out. Yeah, letter writing. Yeah, it's powerful. Journaling. Getting your thoughts down, getting your feelings down, getting them out of you. This is where the therapeutic process can come in. Listen, what have we talked about tonight? We've talked about freedom from DEI and why it matters. Why does it matter? Listen, DEI had a grip on this nation for 4 years. And we also looked from a clinical perspective at freedom from a wicked heart. Listen, we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I love America. I love you. We are going somewhere, and it's expecting us when we get here. What would happen if, as a nation, we began to take on the challenge of flowing in this kind of way, where we say, you know, God, I need you to show me this wickedness in my heart, and I'm going to cooperate with you to embrace observable, measurable. In other words, we'll see you doing it. You'll see you doing it. You'll measure it. Out of 5 times, 3 of them, I made the right choice. Observable, measurable strategies, skills, and tools for wellness and recovery. Listen, we're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there. I am well on my way. Thank you so much for coming and joining me week after week. And I want to say thank you. Yes. I meant to say this. In 2024, guess what? The podcast grew 1,200% on the platform that gets it out there, on Apple Podcasts, all these different podcast platforms. I was blown away. Thank you for that. 1,200%. It was in Singapore, Africa, Australia, just places like I was like, what? To God be the glory. Listen, I will see you next week. God bless you. I love you. Thank you. God bless America. God bless you. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.